But moving along today, Ted graciously helped us fill our fifth spot, which, you know, it took quite a bit of looking around for presenters for this. A few people really stood out, and then it was a little bit of a challenge after that. And so Ted stepped up last minute. Thanks very much for that. And he'll be presenting on the Survey General Branch, helping Indigenous peoples control their lands in Nova Scotia.
Thanks, Shane. Okay, like Shane said, this is a bit of a filler presentation, so it might not be as glamorous as the last few, but hopefully it'll be a little informative. And when Shane and Thomas were struggling to get someone for the last slot, I thought I myself work a lot on reserves, doing mapping and with the First Nations. So if nothing else, I could put something quickly together to kind of that was somewhat related. So as he mentioned, I work with the Survey General Branch, which is in Atlantic Canada. We're part of Natural Resources Canada. I find that a lot of people outside the surveys group don't really know what the Survey General Branch is. So I've given similar presentations before to various different associations. And so the Survey General Branch is a center of excellence for geodetic and legal survey expertise. We ensure access to secure and reliable survey systems on Canadian lands. We ensure that there's clearly defined boundaries and accurate positioning information is met to help meet economic, social, and environment needs.
Ted, sorry, we can't see your screen. Are you sharing?
Oh, sorry, you can't see it?
No.
Thanks, Thomas. I forgot to press the word share.
There you go. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Technicalities. Okay. So you can see the screen now. Perfect. See where I was. Yeah. So our mandate is primarily derived from legislation and international treaties, with the primary role to assume national leadership in cadastral and property rights management. We consist of over 160 qualified professionals, including land surveyors, engineers, scientists, geomatics technologists, policy analysts, and of course our administrative support. Our main offices are located in Edmonton and Ottawa, but unlike most federal departments, our strength actually lies within our regions. So therefore, we have 13 regional offices that are spread out across the country in locations that can allow us to better serve our clients. These clients include obviously other government departments, people who work with GNS data, mining and oil companies, and of course, like today, the First Nation communities. As I mentioned, we're part of Natural Resources and our branch can be broken down into three main pillars. We have the Canadian Geodetic Survey, the International Boundary Commission, and the Canadian Land Survey System. Through these three core components, we help the federal government deliver essential geographic information and maintain legal boundaries while focusing on key priorities. And I found it kind of interesting going through some of our documentation that one of our key priorities is helping Indigenous peoples control their lands. And since today's theme of the session was mapping in Indigenous contexts, I thought that it was fitting, and I will focus mainly on providing information on the Canada Land Survey System, highlighting some of the products and services that we provide through it, and especially highlighting the ones that relate to today's theme. More specifically, I'll mainly talk about the Canada Land Survey System, our high resolution mapping program in Atlantic Canada, First Nations land management program, capacity building, our history of Canada Lands Atlas, and how sharing data, information, and knowledge is one of our key tasks. It's just going to be a broad overview. Therefore, if anyone would like more information on something that I only touch on a little bit or anything that's discussed today, then simply reach out to me and I'll gladly provide more details on anything that I've discussed today. The Canada Land Survey System provides a framework for the identification, documentation, and registration and protection of interests to facilitate development and management of Canada lands. These registries, several land registries that rely on this system include the First Nations Land Registry System, Parks Canada Land Registry, all the land in the Yukon, Nunavut, and Northwest Territories as they fall under our jurisdiction, and of course Canada's offshore regions. By delivering boundary certainty to help advance self-government under First Nations land management, treaty land entitlement agreements, and land claims negotiations, the Survey General Branch is maintaining modern, flexible survey systems that help support Indigenous relationships and help them control uses of land use planning. I probably should step back, maybe should have led with this, but Canada lands is a term that I've used quite often, but maybe I should define it for those that aren't familiar with it. Canada lands is defined to be any lands belonging to Her Majesty and right of Canada, which the government has the power to depose and control. And as I mentioned, this includes all the territories, the Nunavut, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. Includes all Canada's national parks and historic sites, over 3,100 Indian reserves, and extensive offshore region. A lot of that area is vast and unpopulated, but we still have over 500,000 Canadians live on Canadian lands. Kind of to put that into perspective, it's almost like being the population of Quebec City or maybe the province of Newfoundland. Under enabling legislation such as the Canada Land Surveys Act, we provide standards, maintain survey records, and manage these lands. More specific, we provide survey mapping products, data and maps, provide advice and consultation on surveys, mapping boundary, and other land-related issues. We carry out field investigations, boundary inspections, and various surveys. And more importantly, we work closely with First Nations and other government departments on a wide variety of projects. We also manage all current and historic information in what is referred to as the Canada Land Survey records. The Canada Land Survey records collection is a library of over 120,000 survey plans, maps, field notes dating back to pre-Confederation times. Recently, we decided to go. A decision was made to go fully digitally. So a few years ago, our office went through an extensive scanning process to convert this full library into authoritative digital versions, meaning that all scanned copies were in high resolution to scale and they can still be used as legal documents. This full inventory of hard copy plans and maps were then provided to the Canadian Library and Archives for long-term storage and historic preservation, and are located in their collections in Ottawa. Moving forward from that, we now only accept digital maps and plans or scans in digital format using secure digital signatures that have also adopted a digital document management system. So everything in our office now moving forward is all digital as we move away from the paper world. And all our documents, maps, and plans that were located in this system, they're all located in our online search tools and can be downloaded through the Open Government License. Prior to this extensive digital transformation, this large collection was stored in a climate-controlled vault in Ottawa. It had limited access. Maps and plans were rolled around wooden dowels and stored within map cabinets. Often, if you had to make special requests to obtain any older historic documents. But it's all now available online, available whenever anybody needs it. Overall, this large collection that was occupied about 2,100 square feet of space, which is roughly about the size of the main floor of an average house. And interesting enough, technically, this full library in its digital format can now be stored within a portable 3 terabyte hard drive. So information management is key to the Canada Land Survey system. Therefore, on top of our extensive collection of plans, field notes, and survey reports, we also maintain a wide variety of custom mapping products. This includes high-resolution orthophoto, cadastral maps, and topographic and cadastral maps that contain combination of topographic and parcel fabric together. We also understand that although there are quite a few First Nations that do have geospatial access, not all do. So we also provide a variety of online tools to help them and anyone else that needs access to our data or to make use of our data to provide them for land use planning and other related projects. First Nations have some of the fastest growing communities in Canada. Thus, we find that many reserves are very dynamic and change rapidly. This often makes it hard for producing accurate custom mapping products. So here in Atlantic Canada, we have implemented a high resolution mapping program that includes large-scale topographic maps and orthophotos. Currently, we have this data available for all reserves in the Quebec and Atlantic regions, and I believe the other regions are slowly getting on board. We usually contract out the photo acquisition part of the project, as we're only a small office here in Atlantic, but we generate the maps and data in-house, including the QA and QC process. We find that this allows us to spend more time on reserves, interacting with community members and ensuring that our products are getting into the right hands of the intended users. Some of the other advantages of this program include it provides accurate and up-to-date information about reserves and land use planning, supports land use planning and decision-making, provides essential information for the development of infrastructure planning. It can be combined with other data sets from other different departments and groups and organizations, and it also supports the additions to reserve program, which is highly active here in Atlantic Canada. And I find that this data benefits many people and is used by a wide variety of people, including band council members, surveyors, engineers, planners, land officers, community members, and many more. In-house, we take our topographic data that we get from the high-resolution aerial photography, and we combine it with cadastral data from the survey land database to produce what we call survey overlay maps. And these help provide a spatial representation that decision makers are using to help with planning. Large copies of these maps are printed in-house and sent to First Nations to use. And digital copies are always available to download when needed. All our imagery and data is also available through various links on our website, and then when it's not available, we make it available by request. The First Nation Land Management Program first began in the 1980s when a small group of chiefs looking for a way to have their communities avoid the constraints of the Indian Act came together to find a way that could provide them control of their own land and resources. Much later, the federal government came together and formed the First Nations Land Management Act that formed the FNLM program. This program provides signatory First Nations with the authority to manage their own land and define how they use that land and write their own procedures. This process is done through a combination and a group effort between First Nations, the FNLM Resource Center, Department of Indigenous Service Canada, and us, the Survey General Branch. Through that group, we work closely together with the First Nations to help them prepare all legal documentations and ensure that all land has been surveyed and prepared for the transfer process. We provide detailed research reports summarizing all the information they needed and include the rationale that was followed in determining any boundaries and reveal any potential problems. that may arise, so it can be dealt with before the process is finalized. We also provide a final land description report that provides a legal description of the reserve with all corresponding maps and data which detail that identity which is pertinent to that reserve. After a First Nation adopts the FNLM program, they still require legal surveys for land transactions, so still closely work with our office. However, the federal government is no longer the managing authority regarding the internal interests of their lands, and the First Nations community can make decisions, prepare documents, and manage their own lands without seeking permission from the federal government. Therefore, providing high resolution and up-to-date information is key to help with this land management and decision-making. So far to date, we have over 177 First Nations that have entered into this program or are either in the process of joining. Mind you that this slide is a year old, so that number might be a little outdated. And from the map, you can see that it's more of a West Coast, Central Canada buy-in, but more groups in Atlantic Canada are actually getting involved as well. Recently, we were asked to develop a capacity building program that would help the First Nation communities. This program was built upon success of a pilot project that happened in 2016 in a remote area of Northern Ontario where a First Nation community had little access to surveyors or people with geospatial knowledge. The initiative provided the community with a cost-effective, measurable, and timely approach to land management and provided economic development opportunities within their own community. Our current capacity program based on that is very similar and targets communities operating under FNLM, providing up to 12 weeks of in-community hands-on training that ensures that they have all the tools and knowledge to help them make the decisions in the land use planning. The main goal is to provide practical knowledge and surveying principles and mapping techniques, help them gain a better understanding of how geomatics can support interests in First Nations lands. The main goals of this program include removing barriers to help effective land management, increase the community's knowledge of both property rights and spatial data management, enhance geospatial knowledge for land managers, administrators, and decision makers, stimulate an interest in furthering education in science technology fields, specifically geomatics related, and help reduce economic leakage from the community by building skills and develop capacity within. It also helps build long-term relationships between the community land surveyors and our office. The program is module-based, like I mentioned, and it provides instructions on researching land information, how to interpret maps, survey plans, provides health and safety training related to field activities, helps demonstrate the fundamentals of legal surveys, geospatial techniques and methodology used in land management, and provides introductory experience operating the latest survey equipment and software. Training is customized to each First Nations needs through a combination of classroom, hands-on activities, and fieldwork. Participants usually understand that the program does not automatically make them a land surveyor or a technologist, but it allows them to be more involved and apply their knowledge towards community projects. The program also aims to increase awareness to geomatics with the possibility of interesting some of the participants to pursue further education in geomatics fields. And I've been involved over the past 2 years in both the classroom and hands-on training modules. And I've worked directly with several different First Nation communities and actually do know a few members who are now pursuing further geospatial training, both at COGS and at UAB. And the History of Canada Lands is a project that helps visualize the evolution of Canada lands. It can be used to identify and illustrate the evolution of a reserve since its creation. Like I said, a lot of Indian reserves are very dynamic as they grow over time and change due to economic needs. And our History of Canada Lands includes the land status reports, historical narratives, and administrative documents, a brief history of boundary surveys, and of course, various maps and data. Through these documents, it allows users to identify any and all legal documents used to create the reserve, as well as boundary surveys that took place, and a summary of all maps, plans, and surveys used during the development. Each one of the description is accompanied with a spatial graphic to help illustrate change over time, and then put together into like a book. It's sort of like an atlas with details referencing historic and legal documents. First phase of this project has primarily been focused on Indian reserves and not other types of Canada lands like parks. And several First Nations and tribal councils, as well as surveyors, engineers, lawyers, and professionals have expressed interest and have been using this product since we've produced it. Finished copies of this have been made available directly to a variety of government offices and First Nation communities, like I said. However, we currently only have these available by request because they need to be bilingual before we can post them on our website, and not all have been fully translated. And the data from this project is going to be used to create an interactive mapping application where users can visually see changes over time. So there was a quick overview. I think I've kept within the time frame of a little bit of how we work with the First Nations here in Atlantic Canada with the Survey General Branch to producing custom maps, custom data, custom geospatial data, and how we get that in the hands of the First Nations community. And I just want to thank Thomas and Shane for putting this together, and mention that although I did cover a lot of information and didn't really include any links, if anybody has any questions or would like any information about any of this or anything else at the Survey General Branch, feel to reach out to me, and I'm glad he provides more information.
Right on. Thanks, Tom or Ted. We do have a couple of questions streaming in the chat. Peter Stockdale's asking, how do you provide useful materials to urban and traditional Indigenous communities?
Most of the stuff I wouldn't really consider traditional. It would be a little more modern. But through the History of Canada Lands, we do include the focus is on the Canada Lands aspect of it, but through discussions with First Nation tribal councils and the First Nations themselves, there's been several cases where they've brought up documentation showing traditional lands that were not officially underneath the Canada Lands jurisdiction, and we have included those as well in the history component. So I would say that we do include them when available. But for the most part, it's all based on some sort of concrete evidence and not just on hearsay. So we try to base it on actual documentation, which would include any historic maps, whether it be a survey plan or not.